We're recording now. So in terms of the brand name justification, if you complete that form that is on the brand name justification form on our procurement resource library, uh, in specific questions, case by case, we've just anecdotally from my own experience, um, I can think of an instance where an agency wanted to use a brand name justification when really they just were going to need it as a brand name or equivalent. So that's something that you would want to discuss with your SPO. But in terms of your question, is perceived quality reliability of a brand a satisfactory justification? I would probably argue no. I mean, there may be some more justification needed there, but it's probably one of those things where it is a case by case basis. It's not used a lot. It is allowable by code and rule, but I wanted to just make sure that we delineated between brand name only or brand name or equivalent. But in general, without getting additional information, I would say that the perceived quality or reliability of a brand is not a satisfactory justification um, for using a brand name only. Um, Mostly in that situation, is the specification is the specification. Um, it, it, so you could say that the specification of that brand name is what could be used for that particular procurement. Good questions though. Is the brand name selection supposed to be used on the PJF for a sole source procurement? Um, if it's a sole source, it's not going to be a brand name, because multiple suppliers could be using a brand name, right? Whereas a sole source is just from one particular vendor or supplier. Um, in terms of PJF, though, you may want to talk to somebody at CMS as that's their form, but you wouldn't use the brand name selection for a sole source procurement. Okay, good questions, good questions. All right, so if you have any other questions regarding emergency versus small purchase emergency conditions, I don't want to keep, you know, railing on that, but there's additional information from last week, and if you do have any of those situations, reach out to your SPO and they'll be able to help you. Okay, so our next topic here is just regarding some reminders for our small purchase under $10,000 process. We've had just some questions lately, and again, this isn't a full small purchase training, but I just wanted to call out and remind you of a couple things. So regarding CPO notice, and I have the link in there, 2018.10, the state agency may source a single small business set-aside vendor. So this is those small purchases, $2,000 to $10,000. You can go directly to a single small business set-aside vendor. Now, one question or one thing I wanted to highlight is they have to be registered in the small business set-aside program, and that is a year registration. A vendor can renew once a year. Some situations we run into every once in a while is a vendor doesn't get renewed as a small business, even though they were last year or a couple years ago, and the agency goes directly to that vendor. At that point, they're no longer a small business set-aside vendor. They just need to get registered again if they still qualify. But the small purchase threshold or the small purchase process, which is laid out in that CPO notice 2018.10, and we also have some specific small purchase training slides on our training center. So according to that CPO notice, you can go directly to a single small business set-aside vendor if it's between $2,000 and $10,000. However, we are aware that some agencies, it's their policy to immediately go to all of our small business vendors in that situation. So while the CPO's office allows to single source for a small purchase of that dollar threshold, make sure you're following your agency policy because that situation and that policy is really in place for situations where, because of the low dollar value, you're able to, go to the local mom and pop shop down the street, rather than putting it out to small businesses all across the state. But all small business vendors with that selected NIGP code must be solicited unless the agency is able to source a single small business. So just because you can't go to one small business doesn't mean that you go out to all businesses. So you can kind of think of it as almost a three-step process or three tiers. Can we single source a small business vendor? Yes or no? Then it moves to, well, now we're going out to all of our small business vendors, not all businesses, just our small business vendors. And then only a small business, or only a non-small business vendor can be used after all of those small businesses have been solicited and determined unacceptable. And since it's under $10,000, we still have to have a small business set-aside waiver before you go out to your non-smalls. But the agency will sign that small business set-aside waiver. So it's the same form. We don't have a separate waiver for less than $10,000 or greater than $10,000. If it's under 10, the agency signs it. If it's greater than 10, the SPO signs it. But again, you're not going out to all businesses all at once until after the waiver is signed by the agency or the SPO. So think of it that three-step process. Under $10,000, no SPO involvement is required, but I do want to highlight that just because it's not required doesn't mean you can't ask your SPO. Your SPO is there to help, and that's their job. So even though they won't be necessarily approving in BidBuy, if you have any questions regarding that process, we're here to help. I saw a couple questions come in. Let's go in here. Not small purchase related, but are there any certain rules for IFBs and vendors using subcontractors? Yeah, so that's a pretty broad question, but there definitely are those rules in terms of IFBs. You may want to have to reach out to your APO, your agency, or your SPO regarding this. But for vendors using subcontractors, or maybe you can give us a little extra information there. If there's a BEP goal or a veterans goal placed on an IFB, because above that small purchase limit, you potentially could have a BEP goal or a veteran goal. And so for those vendors would be needing to subcontract that certain percentage out to your subcontractors, or to a BEP vendor or a veteran owned firm. Okay, next. Does BidBuy automatically remove businesses who are no longer small business vendors? Yes. So on a nightly basis, every night there's a interface between IPG and BidBuy. So this goes back to the point of kind of to bring in the BidBuy process and our small purchase process here. This is a reason why we don't add vendors at the requisition. We add them at the bid. For our small purchases greater than $10,000, because when we add vendors, we want it to be the most updated as possible. So if a vendor is in the small business set aside program, they're an IPG. Let's say that October, let's see, what's today, 19th. They expired on October 18th. Now today, if you go into BidBuy and try to add them, they won't be there as a small business. So on a nightly basis. So if it's on the same day, technically they would be added to the bidders list. And also vendors are notified from IPG. I believe it's every 60 days, like 60 days, 45 days, and then 30 days that their registration is expiring. So they're also receiving communication from IPG, but it does automatically remove businesses. Oh, you know what? Actually, as I read the question again, it says, does it automatically remove business? So it automatically removes them in BidBuy, but if you're asking, does it automatically remove them from the bidders once they're on there if a vendor is no longer a small business vendor? The system doesn't do that. Once you add your bidders, they're there. So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking there, but the second time I read it, you may be asking if I've added bidders to the bidders list, then the next day, if a vendor is no longer a small business, are they removed from that list? And the answer to that question is no. But the answer is yes, they are removed from. Oh, okay, you said correct. Okay, so yes, in that situation, no. So that's why we're there's a slight chance in there, I guess, that if I add a bidder or if I add a small business vendor today and then it doesn't get sent out until tomorrow, technically they could be in that window where they're no longer a small business. Okay, thank you. All right, yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, let's see another question. Release off mastered. Starts off with check SAP first, if applicable, create shopping cart to check inventory. If no inventory, proceed to bid buy. What does this all mean? Okay, so that's SAP. It may be one of those things if you're an SAP agency, um, and we might have to take that, Kevin. Let's take that offline because I'm not exactly sure because I don't have access to SAP. But normally, if there's inventory in SAP, you would use that first. But let me double check on that. That's a good question, and I'll reach out to you separately. Okay, and then the last note I wanted to make regarding our small purchase under $10,000 is this executed state agency small purchase designation memo. It serves as the written determination for awarding the contract and needs to be attached in BidBuy. So for all of our small purchases under $10,000, you should see or you should attach that small purchase designation memo. And every agency has one on file. It's not a form that needs to be completed each time. Each agency has one currently, which just says that the agency will follow the small purchase process laid out in CPO Notice 2018, 2018.10. And so that needs to be a part of the procurement file because remember, bid buy is the procurement file. And so that state purchase designation letter or memo needs to be attached in there. If you don't have access to that, you can reach out to your APO. You can reach out to me. I can send it to you. It's just a copy of that needs to be in the procurement file. And then also additional information on small purchase training. We do have a slide deck that's there, and we can also provide agency specific small purchase training for you. That's something that we've done quite a bit in the past. And so if your agency would be interested in that, we're happy to do that. There's also a slide deck in our training center, which is linked on this slide for our small purchase, and it kind of walks through all of the different situations. Is it small purchase under $2,000, a purchase 2,000 to 10, a small purchase 10,000 up to the small purchase limit? Walks through each one of those. But again, it's also coming directly from the CPO Notice 2018.10. Okay. So here's another reminder. We haven't talked about this in a long, long time, but if one of your staff leaves, you need to update the BidBuy users. So if somebody's retiring, if they're leaving the agency, or honestly, even if their responsibilities change and they no longer need access to BidBuy, we don't know that from our standpoint, but we do need to keep it updated. And it's probably been a while since this has occurred. So even if you go back and if you know somebody has retired lately or somebody has left, we want to make sure that they no longer have access to BidBuy for obvious reasons, right? So they're going to complete the BidBuy state user registration form. It's the same form that you completed when you first got access, and you're just going to select delete user. So most of you probably completed it at the beginning when you first got access. You put new user, or if you're changing departments or something like that, you would be selecting modify user. But for those people that need to be deleted and no longer get access, select delete user. You're going to complete that form, sign, and send it to stateuser.bidbuy@illinois.gov. So the same form, you're just selecting delete user. I see we had a couple questions pop in. Question, rec bid PO cancellation. What is the official confirmed process, please? Okay, so there are a couple things here. So we have, there are specific rules depending on what procurement method is used. So for instance, an IFB that's being canceled, you'll have to refer back to rule. I don't have it queued up or anything, but you actually do need to do a bid amendment, which will say the reason for canceling that solicitation. So that's actually required. However, if you're canceling a requisition, so anything prior to even being published, you can cancel a rec. That just kind of, we see that sometimes where a rec gets started and then maybe the end user doesn't need it anymore, or there's any other number of reasons why there could be a lot of these requisitions that are still in progress in BidBuy. You can cancel those without any other specific requirements. But I would confirm with your agency first before you do that. Maybe we wouldn't want people to go in and just start canceling requisitions. But then at the bid, like I said, on an IFB or an RFP, the reason needs to be stated why it's being canceled. A bid amendment is done. Again, remember, just a reminder, all of our SPOs are the only ones that apply bid amendments. And then you get to the PO. I'm not sure why canceling at a PO, but maybe there could be another reason there. But for your small purchases, if you're canceling a small purchase, you do not have to do a bid amendment to publicly state the reason why it's being canceled. But I will add to this, it's an agency decision for if an agency wants to do a bid amendment to cancel it. You're not required to do that in the way that you are on a formal solicitation like a RFP or a IFB. But on a small purchase, it's more kind of to let the vendors know, so they're not calling you. So we do have that, and that is okay to do a bid amendment to let them know, but you're not required to do that on a small purchase. Now, going back to the bid, um, and actually, yep, I got a message. I'm going to get into that in just a second too. Um, so, Dave, we were told never to hit the cancel button because all info is lost. So, let's talk about that. If you do a bid, so when we talk about doing a bid amendment, right, something's going to be canceled. If any quotes were received, you don't hit the cancel button. So, we're talking about two different things. A solicitation is, quote, getting canceled, but we're not canceling it in BidBuy. So I understand the confusion there. It's kind of the way we talk about things. You're doing a small purchase and you're just not awarding it. So that's different than going in and actually hitting the cancel button. So in the system, if a vendor attaches any documents in BidBuy, if you hit the cancel button, those forms are lost. Okay, so let me say that again. You don't hit the cancel button on anything that has been received, if you've received any quotes. Okay, that's really important because we need to keep the procurement file intact no matter if something was awarded or not, right? So you don't hit the cancel button on anything that has been, if any documents have been received from vendors, because in the system, once it gets canceled, any of those attachments are lost. Now, at a requisition stage, you can hit the cancel button because no documents were received. I do understand, and I recognize too that that's what we were trained, um, that we were told never to hit the cancel button. So technically, if you never hit the cancel button, you're never going to be in any issues. But really, the risk comes in at anything bid stage and PO stage for canceling. But you can technically cancel a requisition because no documents have been received from vendors. None of those attachments are attached to any vendor quote, that sort of thing. Okay. I think we were told that just to make sure that there was zero risk of that ever happening. But let's go back to that IFB example. If you're going to cancel a bid for an IFB, you're not going to hit cancel bid, but you do need to do a a bid amendment to quote cancel. Again, we're saying canceling a solicitation, but you're not going to hit cancel bid. And so any of those specific, if you're in that situation where you're doing IFB and you need to, and you're not going to award it, so you're quote canceling, you're not going to hit cancel bid, but you still need to reach out to your SPO and do a bid amendment to let the vendor community know. All right. I got another question. Is there a way we can run a report in BidBuy or have a report ran of all the users an agency has in BidBuy? Good question. I will ask that. I'll ask state user. I'm not sure offhand. I mean that BI tool, the business intelligence tool in BidBuy is pretty powerful, so I would think we would be able to do that, but let me confirm and I'll get back to you, Ashley. Thanks. All right, so a couple other things here. Our BidBuy practice sessions will be this Thursday, October 21st. We do it every second and third Thursday of each month. Please feel free to join us. We just go through some examples. If you guys have any specific questions regarding BidBuy, we're happy to walk through those examples. You don't have to have attended last week's BidBuy monthly training in order to join us on any of these practice sessions, and the links are in the training center there. Our normal slide of where they find, or where you can find our Training Tuesdays and our BidBuy training links. And then we get to our our fun and useless fact of the day. Captain Crunch's full name is Horatio Magellan Crunch. Um, totally useless, but maybe you can impress somebody with that. And then our quote of the day, I've not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Thomas Edison. Sometimes I feel like that. So thank you. We'll have the video posted and our slides posted out there. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.